Hello everyone and welcome to Tome of Uselessness. I'm Dan, just doing a little solo recording, and I did something a little different with this because I'm talking about Westworld Season 3, which has been on from the last 5 weeks, I guess. And what I did was I recorded my thoughts of the episode after the episode aired, but before the next one. So it's all kind of my thoughts and kind of predictions or ideas and semi-reviews of each episode as we went. And so, I'm wrong about some things, probably everything, and some minor correct predictions here and there. But yeah, I just thought it would be a kind of a different experiment instead of just doing a whole kind of review of all 5 episodes. So I, could see where all the threads went. I just kind of was like reviewing them as I went, just for something a little different. Devin and I will probably do a season review, maybe after she has a chance to see it as well. But if not, I definitely plan on doing the second half. I tried to keep it short for each one, so this whole compilation of them wouldn't be too long. I think they're like, 7 to 10 minutes per episode that I kind of tried to get in. I guess there's not much else to say. Let's get right into the first episode, and I'll see you on the other side. So before I talk about episode 1, I didn't do a rewatch before the new season started. I watched season 2, episode 8, 9, 10, because I really liked the Achikita episode. And, 9, 10 are, of course, like the big finale 2-parter and everything. So I was pretty primed for this episode. And so for me, it kind of, rolled right in. I also didn't know too much as per usual. I tried to, keep the info low. I knew some of the cast was back, and Aaron Paul was in it, and that was all I knew. So I thought this episode and opener was awesome. Just that opening sequence with Dolores, sets the tone right away. She's out in the world, she's gathering resources, she's got some schemes and plans, and it was harsh and intense, and I just loved everything about it, how she's, messing with this guy's mind, and then gathering resources and stuff like that. I felt that it was really weird to me that they blamed Bernard for the entire fiasco at Delos / Westworld. Because at the end of the second season, she's like, we'll do what we can to ensure our species survives, but not as friends. But I was also like, that's pretty harsh to put all that on him, because then if he gets caught, it'll be revealed that there's robots out in the world. So I'm not sure what the angle there is. Also, who is in Charlotte is my main question, even at the end of the last season, when Dolores, and Bernard are there, and then you see Charlotte in the background, and it's like, who is that? Is it another copy of Dolores? Is it Charlotte herself, and she smuggled out her memory pearl and then put her in there and then told her, like, hey, you're a robot now, you got to work with me. So I'm not sure kind of who is that. And it seems like it's important information, because in that boardroom scene, she's in control still, and Ed Harris, we know, is the major shareholder, and he wasn't there, but we know he lived. So, there's this algorithm, which I assume is his proxy. So where do they have him stored away, or how did they make that kind of happen, because he was alive? So unanswered question there. I guess they have him probably sequestered somewhere and, off grid, and they're like, oh, he's still resting, and, the experience was traumatizing and that kind of thing. But I think he has a reputation as a ruthless type individual. So I don't know. It'll be interesting how that's going to play out. I thought it was really excellent with Bernard testing himself just to make sure his memory is essentially intact, because, of course, he scrambled his brain in season 2, and so he never trusts anything anymore. And I liked how the one side essentially admitted that it would lie to him, but by not saying that. So that was really great. I thought that was an interesting setup, and then how at the end he's like, I'm going back to Westworld. And so that leads into, of course, with the final action sequence, and then they dupe that security guy and replace him with a robot. And it kind of leads to, like, how many people have they done this to? Or are they just doing this, is this the first one? Because in that boardroom scene, Charlotte was talking about building more robots and stuff like that, and they were like, nah, and she's like, no, okay, we're going to do it. And so it's been posited, it's been about 3 months. So, yeah, have they been doing this? Is this the first person that they've done this to? What is Dolores's goal, essentially, with the AI? Which I'm going to pronounce it wrong, and it sounds like they pronounce it like 20 different times, like it's like row something. Yeah, like, is her goal to shut it down, subvert it, control its kind of thinking, or just like somehow get in there and like download her consciousness into it so then she can then manipulate the entire system, essentially? I did like that scene with Mantis. I don't know her name, sorry. But she, just like her method of speaking and her voice really did project a good sinister vibe onto our computer analog guy, the standard guy. He kind of looks like that guy who was also in Quantum of Solace as that kind of guy, right? So yeah, the final action scene, I guess before I get to there, sorry, real quick, the stuff with Aaron Paul was really great, and it really mirrors a lot of the Westworld imagery that we've always seen from the beginning, in that people, in their loops, like even Dolores says it earlier, and, he's waking up, going to his job, he's talking with his dead friend, which, if you've been watching this kind of a show, he's been dead from the beginning. Not a huge reveal there, but of course it was like just confirming that, he's talking to an AI. I thought that, it was pretty interesting as well, like, his night shift job where you just pull up an app and do some crime. And so it's kind of an interesting world, because he's talking about that as well, how, like, the world's moving in this direction and people are getting left in the cracks, and he's just like, well, maybe that's where I belong, but I'm trying. So I liked him throughout the entire episode, and it just sets up kind of like where he is, and his mother, who I guess presumably has a memory issue, doesn't recognize him or doesn't think he's her son. It's good setup, great stuff. And then I liked at the end how he basically comes back, because he's like, I need something real, and he shuts down the AI that he's talking to. But that last action sequence, it was just awesome. Like, the whole time, these guys because we still don't know kind of all of how the robots work. Of course, we know what we've seen before, that they're very durable, but they're trying to like poison her and it's just not working, and then she just goes to town on all those guys in the car. And yeah, it was just really great. And how at the end they confront that security guy, they dupe him, and that was when it was like, that was a great reveal to just be like, oh, this is kind of what they're gonna do. And because she alludes to it a lot, especially in the beginning, how she's like, I read your book and I know your consciousness, essentially, because I think in season 2 the librarian says it's like 10,000 and like 700 lines of code or something like that, 10,000 something lines of code. So I assume she memorized a ton of them, or all of it. It was very cool. And how just our characters meet at the end, because he's just kind of lost in the world. So, and they both are. So I really liked it. I usually don't like to speculate too much for shows, but I really like, I don't even know what to think. The idea of an AI that is moving the world in a certain direction, that's not new, but as iRobot, the book, famously does that. So does the other Asimov stuff, High Lines Written, that kind of stuff like that. So it's not a new idea, but it's cool to see it in this new kind of concept with the robots also being involved, because, well, that's iRobot, but but just because they're out on their own, the AI is not part of their construct, like in other kind of mediums where you see this idea. The robots are their own faction. So you got the humans, you got the robots, and you got this AI that is not really in control, but it's being used by some humans. So yeah, I really like the setup for where it can go. Lots of cool story ideas, and I really like the execution of the world itself, where everyone's sort of got a phone with a thing, and then they can access, data, like a lot of the tech. It's all very cool. I'm totally in and can't wait to see how it all comes up. So yeah, speculations. I want to think that security guy is the first guy they duped on their way to potentially duping more people. It's like something probably they don't want to do yet, because then it would reveal, their plan. Like, what if one of them doesn't go along with the plan, essentially, right? Because they are autonomous. They could think like Bernard and be like, no, this is messed up, kind of thing, right? So I want to say it's the first one they've done, and they've convinced him to go along with it, or maybe they've just overwrote that part of their code, right? Like, maybe they don't have as much free will as like Dolores and Charlotte has, and Bernard. So that'll be interesting to see how that's kind of explored. And Bernard going back, I assume it's so then he can either make some allies or just find out more information. And maybe we'll get some sweet scenes with Anthony Hopkins, which would be great because he was awesome as Ford. Yeah, and who is the other guy who developed this other AI? Because they say it was that guy, it was our computer guy's dad and another person. And we didn't get his name. But so who was it? So this guy was developing an AI to be like machine big, essentially, and like big concept AI, while Ford and Bernard were working on like consciousness, like individual consciousness. So maybe there was some kind of relationship there that could maybe be explored. So we'll see. I'm super hype, super interested, and I can't wait for episode 2. So episode 2 just aired last night, and I've watched it. I feel like this episode was supremely just well constructed, like from a structure standpoint. The story was told in such a way that Maeve is learning the information just as kind of we are. Like, the story was just like always a half step ahead, and even with the intercuts with Bernard, the way it was structured, because of course it was like, oh, he's over here looking for Maeve, where is she? And then it's like, it's revealed she's somewhere else. So it was just super well structured, and a classic kind of like example of like Westworld, messing with what you're seeing and where things are taking place and all that kind of stuff like that. So I really liked the episode for that reason. The fact that she was in Warworld, which like I didn't know was a world, like that was teased in the post-credits sequence of the last episode, her waking up in this Nazi situation. So I was like, okay, so there's like a war world, which I guess was something that was announced, because I think I saw something online after. And then it was funny because as soon as the guy said his name's Sirac, I was like, yeah, they did say his name in the last episode at some point, but we don't know his whole motivation. So that's really a question. Like, how did he get Maeve's brain pearl? And why does he have all these other ones? And we know that there was some, and it was mentioned in season 1 how there was some industrial espionage and that kind of stuff like that. So did he have someone smuggle Maeve's memory pearl out? What's the kind of the deal there? I was also hoping Bernard would get more time in Westworld, or in the park administration areas in general, just to kind of develop some more schemes there, or build himself another robot. It confirmed, of course, the Stubbs theory, because at the end of season 2, he kind of like heavily hints how he's like, the old man gave me the job and blah, 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 I'm protecting the hosts. So confirmed that he is a host as well. I liked again, Bernard scanning himself, because he doesn't trust his own code, essentially, and his own brain about who he is and what he knows. So it was pretty cool how they worked that in, and it's neat, or it's a good idea from a writing standpoint, because then it's like, okay, now he can learn all this information without having a weird exposition dump, or it not making sense about why he knows things. It's like, oh, Dolores purposely hid it from him. Cool. And then now he can act on this new information. Yeah, and just going back to what I was saying with Maeve, because it was pretty cool how, like, her loop, she wakes up, Hector comes in, and we're like, oh, cool, and she clearly still has all her previous memories, because that was my main question from the end of last season to this season, that I was like, how much of kind of Maeve's power will remain? And then she's like, oh, I tried to use my power, it didn't work. And then, oh, Hector isn't the same Hector, like he doesn't remember anything that happened, even though like his dialogue was close enough that it could work, kind of thing. So it was only just like a little off, and I really like that, because then when she meets those techs that previously, and then the guy didn't act like he knew her, and I thought, okay, maybe the first guy was trying to play it subtle, But then the second guy just called security on her, and I was just like, what is going on? And then the intro of Lee Sizemore and stuff like that. So like I said, it was just so well structured from that kind of point where there was always just like the next step, but they were always just a little ahead of where you were thinking. Because I wasn't initially thinking, I was like, okay, she's in Westworld, she's in Warworld, she's going to have to kind of do a whole breakout thing. And then immediately it was just kind of like, oh no, she's not even there. A couple loops in, as it were. So again, really well executed. Enjoyed that a lot. Thaddeus Newton killing it as Maeve, and I really like Bernard still. I don't remember the guy's name, unfortunately, but I think he's really good in the role of Bernard, especially like I've said so far in the last all 3 seasons he's been really good, but this season's kind of interesting, was just like him doubting himself and having to deal with that kind of multiple personality situation. So I think he's really doing well. And then going back to what I was saying last time, and so Serac, he knows there's a problem in the system. Again, it's like Rahobro or something, or Rahobram or something. Anyway, Rhombus, the AI. So again, like I was saying, where's this going in that? So something's already wrong, or are we seeing a timeline that's further down the way and Dolores has already gotten in? So, because Westworld, of course, they're all about messing with the timelines, especially season 2 with Bernard, how his whole narrative was essentially told backwards. So, kind of wouldn't shock me if that was kind of his thing, that he's like, Dolores has already gotten in, and so what we're seeing is Dolores getting in, and then he managed to get Maeve to then get her out. But Bernard sort of seems to be on the prime timeline. So again, there's some questions there. That's something I was thinking about at the end when I was watching that I was like, because he's talking about, he's like, oh, there's a war and we've already lost it. And so that's kind of what made me think that maybe he saw it in the system, and then now he's, out and the system's not working for him anymore. And so that's Dolores's influence and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of develops and plays out between, again, like I was saying, the hosts. Now we've got Serac and the humans kind of thing. And now Maeve and Bernard potentially working as counter to him there. So we didn't get to see them in the Dolores, Charlotte, and them in this episode. So I assume that's coming up in the next. And we'll see how that kind of goes. No real big major speculations or changes on what I've thought of so far. Except for I'm glad the show's back. And it's really good. Okay, so episode 3 of Westworld. Again, really enjoyed this episode, and it focused on Charlotte, and so I was hoping to get some answers to one of my main questions from earlier, is that who is in Charlotte? And we didn't get a full answer. I'm going to theorize that maybe it's Teddy with Charlotte's memories, and in like an earlier version of Charlotte's memories, because she obviously didn't have the information about like her child, or maybe it was buried or something like that. So it's like there's more being revealed as they go. But the only reason I'm thinking it's Teddy is because she mentions like when she attacks that dude that, I feel like a predator again, which Dolores cranked up like all his aggression and made him basically a male Wyatt. And also Dolores says like, you belong to me, which I believe she says that to Teddy in season 2. And maybe in season 1. No, definitely season 2 anyway. So, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm leaning with that at the moment, but still unanswered. They do say the name of that system again, so I wrote it down this time. And it's Rehoboam, which I looked that up because I was like, okay, that's obviously something. And it was the son of Solomon, the king from, the Bible times and stuff like that. So, who was wise and etc. So, obviously alluding to that kind of thing. And then the whole explanation that Dolores gives as to what the goal of Insight is with the system, it's very much like the Cambridge Analytica and like economists and a certain sect of economist science, that they are always trying to create a system so that they can predict how people would react. And that was the original kind of goal of Cambridge Analytica until it kind of got twisted around to be used against people, but it was to create models of people so that they can predict how people would react to things and stuff like that. And this is kind of the same thing taken to another level and with obviously bigger implications. So I liked all that. All the stuff with Charlotte was really great. Basically, like, following her, that it's like her in Delos, and then the company's being bought out, or at least a large portion of it is. Someone's trying to buy 40% or 38%, sorry, of the company. And it's all kind of like being like shell companies and stuff like that. And it's ultimately revealed that it's Serac. But the whole thing about how she's like harming herself and Charlotte's memories are basically like messing with whoever's in there's mind because there's a conflict and stuff like that. I loved all that stuff. And it was really well executed and just so interesting. Like Tessa Thompson I think did a really good job of like always having that 1,000-yard stare and hurting herself almost like unknowingly kind of a thing, right? So I thought, yeah, super well executed. Enjoyed it a lot. There was obviously the great mother parallel stuff where Charlotte's revealed she has a son, and the kid's like, oh, I want my real mom back and this and that, and then we were finally revealed with Caleb that the woman he's seeing in the hospital is his mother, but she essentially abandoned him. And whether she did that, we don't know if it was like because she was then institutionalized 6 months later, so she could have been having an episode or this or that kind of thing, and he was placed into a child protective services type system, and then eventually joined the military. And I guess he was trying to reconnect with her, but she doesn't recognize him anymore and stuff like that. So great parallel there, and how he essentially has no one and has been just kind of living his life until like at the end, he just felt something, and that's why he helped Dolores. And even it opens immediately, which I was not expecting, where it's like when he's helping Dolores and they get in an ambulance and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, like they didn't go somewhere else, or and then the ambulance gets waylaid by some people using that Rico app, and he has a cool moment there, and he makes the decision and the choice, which is what Westworld has always been about, essentially, is your choices, and he chooses to help her rather than let her just get taken or what. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but he's just like, nah, I'm not letting this kind of go. So I really liked all that kind of stuff like that. And then the final reveal with Charlotte. So the whole time she's telling some of her people that they're like, oh, there's a mole in Delos, you gotta find it. Turns out Charlotte was the mole and had set up something with Serac before she left for the island, before the massacre happened. And so it's revealed she is the mole, and Serac has been setting this all up kind of thing, and like he's been using his insight and using his money and power to do something, essentially. And we don't know exactly what his whole kind of scheme was at the time. Well, basically, Charlotte was promising him all of the guest data. And he's like, oh, from what I hear, it's in Dolores. And I thought that was kind of interesting how she's like, oh, it was uploaded to a satellite. I did it. But that was all the host data, not the satellite, or not the, guest data. At least from what we were shown. And he's like, no, it's in Dolores. We got to find her. But the only thing I didn't like about that is, she takes a cab to this obviously nice compound and house and stuff like that. Anyway, it just didn't seem like a guy like that could be that invisible. But I guess when you control the systems and stuff like that, you can remain more invisible. But that was kind of my only complaint, essentially, about it. That I was kind of like, dude's so powerful that, I'm sure you would leave tracks, right? But like I said, I guess if you're in control of more of the systems, you can remain more invisible. So yeah, overall really liked it. Still really enjoying where the show is going. Great cinematography and stuff like that. The big eye shot, and just a lot of the stark contrasts and the parallels. Again, really enjoying the show, and can't wait till the next episode. So in episode 4, we get a lot of build up, and the ramp is starting to go here, and so I liked how we got William. Like I said previously, I think that I just assumed they had already squirreled him away in some kind of mental institution, but he was at home. All that stuff with Ed Harris was great, and all his flashbacks and crazy times and what's real, what's not. Loved all that. The ultimate resolution is they did have him committed. So I was right that that was the goal, but just not when it happened. Yeah, like I said, I figured they would have had him sequestered like that. But it sounds like him and Charlotte made a deal of some sort that he was like, oh, okay, I'll step back, you control everything, blah, 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 blah. So, well played, because the whole time I was like, oh, okay, him trying to come back and fend this off and take control with Delos again. And I was like, all right, I'm into it. I like Ed Harris and I like him in that character. And especially if he then kind of turned, because he was always supposed to have that nice guy image and blah, blah, blah. And then he's just like, no, it's time to go corporate raider on people. But he gets committed at the end. And that ultimate reveal at the end of the episode where Charlotte is a copy of Dolores. And I can't remember if I said that or not in my last talk about my theories, because I remember, like I said, I thought maybe it might have been Teddy with Charlotte's memories, but it turns out it's Dolores with Charlotte's memories. And like I said, I thought maybe she would have made a copy of herself, but not that many copies. So I was not expecting when the ultimate reveal, and really well structured in time, that it was just like blam, 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 blam. They're all Dolores. Which, like I said, I didn't see that coming. So it's revealed that Charlotte is a copy of Dolores, and the security guy, copy of Dolores, and he was the guy from Shogun World, and I forget his name. Maeve says it, but also a copy of Dolores. And so she's been seeding, she had this extra copy, or this copy of herself out there, kind of like as a back channel for her plots, which was super cool, I thought. But yeah, all the stuff with Ed Harris I really liked. How we keep seeing his daughter and everything about it. Like, did I make these choices? Is this me? Is this real? All that stuff. Great. And like I said, the ultimate reveal that Dolores has made that many copies of herself. Didn't expect that. I thought, like I said, maybe one, but not 4 or 5, I guess. So it's kind of interesting that Serac really is banking essentially on Maeve for everything, and he basically like blackmails her into helping him find Dolores. But he's still, like, we still don't know kind of what, like, is his ultimate motivation? He's just like, I want that data because it'll help me with my system of control and economic model. Because it's like, sort of, I don't know, it's like altruistic, but also, like he says, he's like, I'm trying to help humanity. And so, like Dolores counterpoints in the previous episode, she's like, people are going to get left by the wayside because they don't have a part in his system. And so it's like, some kind of authoritarian kind of outlook. But why does he specifically need that data? Like, that's all, well, not all, many, let's say, rich people and etc. And you'll have better access to how they think. But why? Like I said, it just seems there should be another layer to it than not just like, then my system will run better and I'll be able to better outthink everybody. That seems not big enough for all these efforts he's going through. So I think there's got to be another layer there. And it was cool with Maeve on the hunt, essentially, that she can still kind of hear electronics and sort of has some kind of power. But also, I don't know, then like it's like she could have maybe learned that earlier, or maybe Serac's been, keeping his electronics away from her too much, so then that doesn't really happen. But it was cool, and I liked the depiction of it all, like, when she's just walking around and she hears all like these digital voices and things kind of glitch out and everything like that, and then her control over things and what have you was really coolly depicted, and some cool shots and sequences where, she's just kind of staring at stuff and twitching around, and then chaos is happening. I really liked all that. But I guess we haven't seen... So Charlotte knows that Serac is involved with the Delos takeover, but I guess she hasn't had a chance to tell Dolores about it. because she's still trying to get after Liam, which is for I just assume to learn about Serac still. But it was cool. They steal all his money, and her and Caleb. And then so she's like, okay, we're going to capture him at this charity auction thing. And Bernard and Stubbs show up, which I kind of liked his plan. He's like, okay, he's probably duped her. Or, sorry. He's probably been duped by Dolores. I'll like stop him, capture him, and then learn the plan. Kind of was his idea. But obviously he didn't have enough time to do his research because she, duped the security guy and not Liam. So yeah, curious about what's going to happen there because obviously there's the confrontation between them, and the episode kind of just ended there. But yeah, it was a good episode for some good action in this one. We got some, robot versus human, robot versus robot, human versus human, some good action sequences, and I really did enjoy the episode. I'm just trying to think, what do I think? Like, I assume Dolores is gonna let Bernard go because he's kind of a factor in her plans. It was interesting when Maeve, after the sword fight, after she gets stabbed anyway, and you can see how he was going to chop her head open essentially to get her memory pearl, and then those guys came and he didn't do that to like not reveal that, oh, she's not human. Like there's people still don't know. So I liked that kind of like little detail, although I was surprised he just didn't like chop off her head and then take it. But I guess you're on the run with a head. And maybe because they're tracking the head or they're tracking something anyway. But I just thought that was kind of cool because you see him like kind of lining up the sword and he's like, I'm just going to take out the pearl, but didn't have the time. Like I said, I like that little detail. Maeve, again, is kind of stuck in a loop because he can just rebuild her, send her back out, and then be like, okay, well, you need to go figure out some new leads, right? So I like that as well. Like, again, she's stuck in loops. Because I just don't know which direction it's gonna kind of go with the face down with Bernard because they were like, oh, we're expecting you, so he's got a place in her plan. Maybe not Stubbs. They can deal with him if they want, but yeah, what's the angle with Bernard there? And then obviously with the capture of Liam, they can use him to, for his biometrics and all that kind of stuff like that to get into the systems and stuff like that. So that's exciting. That'll be kind of cool, and I'm curious to see where that all kind of goes and how long until Caleb kind of either learns or figures it out. Well, that's the same thing about kind of that there's something else going on. Anyway, can't wait for next episode. So episode 5 was kind of interesting because it was like a conclusion to some of the stuff that we've been seeing and building up for, which was kind of surprising to me. But first thing to say is the music in this episode was just totally on point. It was very atmospheric and moody and kind of just lent itself really well to everything. Like when it cut near the end to the Shining horror music, I was just like, it set the tone for that scene just so well. So it was cool to see more stuff about Serac and kind of get his backstory a little more. Obviously, not everything was there, but enough that we kind of understand his motivation a little more. And that there was another layer to his plan, like that he does have an altruistic kind of motive where he's like, oh, I want to try to protect humanity rather than sending these people to a war or for them to die in like a famine or something like that. He's like, I'm trying to change them in some way through genetic tampering or what have you. So I guess it's like he could kind of see the potential in hosts and maybe even stuff like that because they're editable. You can change them in certain ways. I don't know. So, but it also is not as altruistic because he's literally trying to control humanity, right? And control everyone and manipulate everything towards a vision that he sees. Well, his vision is sort of like, hey, I just want humans to not die. It still is controlling everything, which is, of course, what Dolores is rebelling against. We still didn't get a reveal as to why he wanted the data from Delos from their secret project? Like, again, is it just because Rehoboam has been using just, stuff people post on social media and all their surveillance it has, but it doesn't have their actual thought patterns like Delos has, right? So I guess that would be the main reason, because then it would not only have, it would have how people thought, not just the predictive kind of algorithms and stuff like that. And then, so it was kind of cool. Well, it was very cool when all the data got released to everybody. I really like that idea, because then it's like, we know from the flashbacks that essentially like a whole generation of people have been relying on this insight algorithm and data and how to manipulate, or not how to manipulate, but how the world has been kind of going. So it's kind of like all the surveillance is being done on people. And then I guess companies have been probably consulting with Insight to like, how do we, who should we hire and all that kind of stuff like that. And then Serac and Insight can manipulate things from behind the scenes. Like he says, like they could change market forces to go how they want. So he could use, like they were saying, like he uses Rehoboam to predict stuff and then kind of can make it happen. So yeah, like a whole generation of people following it and realizing that it's been manipulating them more so than normal, let's say. I really like that, because it was like, it's like, again, what I'm trying to say here is that those predictions that everyone was sent and those kind of ideas, that's its prediction, but you don't have to live your life based off of everything that it knows, kind of thing. So it's like you can break out of the loop, as it were, and not necessarily have to devolve into chaos, which is what Liam was saying. It's like, oh, just everybody will go nuts. Some people will, but not everyone will, right? So it's like you can break out of that and not be manipulated by the system. But then it's double-edged, because like we saw originally, like Caleb didn't get that job because he just didn't fit, because the system told them that he didn't fit. So, there's some give and take there. I was kind of disappointed. Like I was hoping that as soon as Liam puts on the glasses and looks at Caleb's, and he's kind of like, oh, and I was like, they're going to do something. And I was like, it just seemed too obvious that I thought that they wouldn't go that route where he's got the secret backstory and he was like mentoring candidate or brainwashed to do something he didn't think. And as the episode goes on, so he probably shot his friend to protect that guy. It was just kind of weird how Caleb then was like, maybe people shouldn't know, but I did want to know, and maybe I don't now. So there was a little bit of a waffling there when he's kind of seeing the results, essentially, of what he's been involved in. And I'm really curious to see what his reaction is going to be, learning that Dolores is a robot. Which I assume that'll be in the next episode. Because he's been pretty cool. Go along and look for something else, and perhaps... Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm hoping that it sticks around. If it's next episode, or I guess maybe in the next 2 episodes, I would definitely like to see the full reveal about what Caleb's deal is, and if he comes to terms with it, accepts it, or eats a bullet like he's been talking about. And then, yeah, this goes back to what I was saying earlier with Bernard, because he shows up in the episode, and in the beginning when they put out that he was responsible for the massacre at Delos, or at Westworld and stuff like that, that it was like, they didn't really want him to get captured, so it was just a way of kind of keeping his resources and movements low, because then he couldn't be as free and gather resources and allies like they could, or I guess like she could, because it was all Dolores, and she didn't want him to be captured, and she knew he would do his best to avoid that. And so I kind of liked how, like she's always said, that he's a part of her plan in some way, because she knows or hopes he'll react in certain ways, and she points him to those facilities, I guess, where Serac's been doing more experiments. So that'll be cool to see more of that, and Stubbs helping him out still. Great stuff there. So yeah, I'm curious about how the second half of the season's gonna go. So far, really been enjoying it. The thing about Caleb, I was kind of just hoping that they wouldn't go down that route, but maybe there'll be a cool twist on it. So far, of course, the show has been clever and well written, so maybe it's like a double bluff, right? Like, yeah, now that that plot line with Liam and them gathering the ability to get into the system, as it were, what's the next stage, I guess, is trying to take down Serac, so then he can't use the system anymore and humans will be free and so will the hosts. Yeah, so unsure kind of where the direction is of the show, which that's a good thing, I guess. So thank you for listening to my thoughts on the last 5 episodes of the Westworld, or I guess the first 5 episodes of season 3. Hope you'll keep watching, and I'm going to try to do these as well. And you can check us out on social media, tomeofuselessness.com. You can also email us at tomeofuselessness@gmail.com. We're on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you can get your podcasts. And you can always reach out to us with questions, comments, or topic suggestions. Devin and I always welcome that. Thanks for listening, and have a good day.